Hello, welcome to Monetizing Innovation. I'm John Holcomb, the best-selling author of Creating Value Faster. Innovation isn't just the big idea on the whiteboard. It's the hard decisions, the missed signals, and the leaders who keep moving forward anyway. This show dives into real stories behind breakthroughs in life sciences, healthcare, tech, hospitality, and how ideas become results, how teams align under pressure, and how strategy turns into execution. If you're building something bold, or looking for clarity to lead with confidence, you're in the right place. Press play and let's turn innovation into impact. Today, our guest is a little turn from some of the industries we've covered to date, but Ron Swidler is the CEO of the Getty's Group, and he spent 35 plus years turning hospitality design into something that actually performs for owners and operators. He helped launch the Hotel of Tomorrow project in 2003, a think tank with 100 plus companies focused on what's next in hospitality. He's led brand and prototypical hotel work through Getty's branding and Getty's One. He runs an integrated team built around from storyline to bottom line, so strategy and execution stay tied together. Welcome, Ron. We really look forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Ron, it's funny because I think with some of the conversations we've had to date on the show, it's been much more in the healthcare and tech sector. So I think this is a real treat to dive into some of your experience, especially with the hospitality, because it's the same principles, and you've had some really hard-won lessons, I think, over the years. And so with that, maybe we could start with anything that you'd like to cover up front.
The first thing I want to say, other than thank you for having me on your show, and it is fascinating. You've covered so many interesting parts of business. The hospitality industry is so alluring that more and more companies are actually looking for ways to incorporate hospitality into their business, into their offering. So, we're asked to work on projects like senior living, for example, that is recognizing the value of a hospitality mindset or service delivery. And that is something that we're great at. And of course, what it really comes down to, John, is making people feel great. So the hospitality industry is great at making people feel great and thinking about how they feel and using environment and service in order to accomplish that. So while there hasn't been as much opportunity for hospitality to extend into senior living yet, it's about to. We're seeing it more in retail. We're seeing it in higher education, even where we're working on some projects right now. One down the street at Northwestern University for Kellogg, where it's a combination of hotel and university facilities. And we're doing the same thing in other locations as well. So we're seeing that the desire to learn lessons from hospitality and to take great care of the people who are visiting or who are part of the company is becoming increasingly important to today's businesses.
I couldn't agree more with you, especially with the fact, in this world of AI, we're really starting to understand that importance, right, of that human touch, that human influence. And I think who does that better, right, than the hospitality industry?
Well, it is an interesting. I know you've covered AI from a bunch of different angles, and it's fascinating. I'd love to talk a little bit about how AI is affecting our business. And I think that ultimately it's the combination of technology and people serving people that will allow us to serve people even better. And the balancing point really is not to sacrifice personal interaction for technology, but to find ways to supplement it. And I'll give you a brief example of something that happened to me recently. I had checked into a hotel, and upon check-in, I had received a notification that said, "Welcome, Ron. It's a pleasure to have you. And please let us know if there's anything we can do to assist you, blah, 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 blah."
Hmm.
I didn't think much of it. I didn't even respond to it until I got in the elevator and got stuck in the elevator. And now all of a sudden, I have the ability to contact the hotel and say, or the hotel's AI, and say, "Hey, I'm stuck in this elevator. Maybe you can help me out." And sure enough, within a few minutes, they were able to rescue me out of the elevator. Now, that was just an example of like technology supplementing human interaction and care, but it gave me a greater level of comfort and sense of security and created another channel for me to communicate with the hotel.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great example because it's really the technology serving, right, the key mission. And I think in almost all industries, right, the is critical to understand what is the problem to be solved. Technology for technology's sake is useless. You really need to understand, what you're trying to do to help your customer.
And to build on that, I think because a couple of things are also true, which is that customers' expectations are changing constantly, and your consumer, the people who are actually staying in hotels, are changing constantly as well. You have new travelers, going on the road for the first time. You have people retiring and traveling only for leisure and less for business. Like the dynamics of how to take care of the needs of those guests is shifting, and it becomes particularly difficult to forecast and predict. That's, one of the things about hospitality, John, that I guess we could dig into if you want, is, and why it's a different industry, is because it's a highly perishable inventory. You have your chance to sell that room tonight. You can't sell tonight's room tomorrow because or that day is gone. And so it is a marketing machine that is influenced so heavily by people's personal opinion about the quality of their stay, right? Social media and the other online forums where people are saying what they thought about the quality of service or environment. And the hotel industry, I don't know if you know this, but they are evaluated based on guest satisfaction and intent to recommend as much as they're evaluated on occupancy and hotel rate. So as a parent brand, someone like Marriott, who I was just on a call with a minute ago, they're looking at all kinds of key indicators, including how likely are you to recommend it. So now the power of evaluation is moved to the guest, right? They're the ones who are saying, I give you a 4 stars out of 5 or a 3 stars out of 5 or whatever. That has a major influence on whether or not someone chooses to stay at that hotel or eat at that hotel restaurant. And now you have this, as I alluded to earlier, an ever changing group of guests who have their own unique demands or requirements or need states at the hotel that you're trying to satisfy. So it's very difficult to know how to shape your offering for today. It's even harder to forecast what those changes might mean for what the future brand, the future hotel offering might need to be.
And that dynamic of, you could almost get overwhelmed by the data, right? If not using it appropriately. What are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years of how to address that and really, leverage this shift in the market?
So we were doing some work for Hilton. We were redeveloping their Hampton brand, and that's part of the work that we do is not just one-off projects. We provide branding services, we provide interior design services for both the bespoke, unique kind of boutique hotels and the prototype design execution. The Hamptons, for
Mhm.
example, or the Courtyards, et cetera. And then we also do procurement of furnishings and finishes. So and in addition to all that, we spun out a separate group. We're in the hotel development business ourselves, and we have 7 franchises with Marriott. We have 1 with Hilton. So we think like owners, and then we have this collection of services. So before I wanted to give you my answer, I wanted all your listeners to understand kind of how we approach this industry, because it is a rather kind of diverse and unique kind of approach to the industry. So we were working with Hampton, and we were trying to modify the future offering and evolution of that brand. And we worked on that for 2.5 years. Then Hilton gave their franchisees, now 3,000 franchisees, they gave their franchisees 2 years to comply with the new standard. And then once they did comply with the standard, the intent was that we weren't going to touch the standard again for 7 more years. So now think about how good your crystal ball needs to be, John, because you're not only trying to predict the needs of today's guests, but you're trying to look out, you know, 2.5 plus 2 or 3 plus 2 plus 7 years. I mean, it's very, very difficult. So what we do in order to be more adept at predicting future guest needs is we study other industries, because in some ways the hospitality industry leads and in other ways it follows, and there are examples of other industries that are more progressive. We try to pay attention to emerging technologies, but not because of the single solution, but because it's giving you insight as to what might be most important to that guest. We also pay attention to shifting demographics. And then lastly, we also have partnered with a company called Verve out of Cincinnati, started by a buddy of mine, Chad Reynolds. And Verve, which is a portmanteau of video and survey, a market research company that is powered by AI. And they work with companies like Lego and Nike and Reebok and Procter and Gamble and Unilever to use their AI engines to predict the future target audience or guest or consumer and what they will want. And so we're actually utilizing Verve as a platform for testing our ideas before bringing them to market in order to get insights directly from the agents who represent those future guests. And that is about as good as we can get right now as a prediction tool. And the results are incredible. John, we just did a project for Hyatt on one of their brands, and we're developing the evolution of that brand. And we were able to feed images, taglines, pricing, rituals, and programming offerings all into the Verve platform and get feedback from virtual guests, virtual future guests to the ideas that we were proposing. And the insights were incredible. You were getting results that said, this is what is likely to be most important to these guests. We would suggest you prioritize your spend over here. And that is about as effective as we can be at predicting what the likely demand will be from these likely audiences for these future offerings.
Well, and that's so powerful, right? Because you're able to look at data insights, right? That would probably, if you think 10 years back, would have been almost impossible to pick up some of those subtle trends, but are some of the key buying influences, right? So I imagine that was an interesting discovery as you went through that process.
It was an incredible discovery. I think we have been generalizing too much in the past. We thought, okay, a business traveler wants this, or a leisure traveler wants that, or a family traveler wants this, and there are too many generalizations there. So I think what AI is doing for the hospitality industry is it's able to digest, simplify, and present a tremendous amount of information in a way that's immediately useful. And that is making us smarter, and it is changing our offering, and it is empowering our designers to create solutions that fit the audience. Because imagine for a second if we were designing a restaurant 10 years ago. We would take all of our restaurant design experience and we would study the market and understand the other restaurants that are nearby. And we would make a bunch of generalizations about what people want. And we would design it, and the operator would open the doors. And you know what the failure rate of restaurants has been typically. It's very, very high. And unfortunately, I think that that was the way in which we could get consumer insights, was by spending a lot of time and money and make an offering. And what I think that we're able to do now, and what the hospitality industry or the design industry is learning from technology, is to make smaller bets and make faster, smaller bets. You talk about in your book about creating value quickly and aligning the philosophy of the company and trying to use the data in a meaningful way. And the same thing applies to companies like ours that are not the traditional, and please forgive me, listeners who are architects or engineers, but not the traditional way of thinking that architects and engineers think, which is that there is one way to design and document that is proven over time and that mitigates the most amount of risks associated with building occupiable structures. I mean, and there are reasons why there are building codes. So we have the freedom to, I think, be more entrepreneurial and try to be as filled with insight as possible before we advance our design solutions.
I think that that's so important what you lay out too, because taking some of the smaller, quicker bets, right, to progress the knowledge and understanding really goes a long way, because you can really refine your concept, right, well before you have to start sinking significant dollars into it.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell you something that we've started recently doing that you and I haven't talked about yet, but I think it's a fascinating idea for your listeners. we were inspired by concierge medicine and the way that medicine is now being almost stratified for those people who wanted more personalized care and wanted access to doctors and didn't want to just be a number to the doc in behind a lot of other people in line, that for a premium, patients could get access to more personal care. And in the hospitality industry, you look at kind of the stratification of quality and say, as you move up into luxury, your expectation is that you'll be getting a higher quality service, more personalized service, more attentive service. Okay. So we as a company, think about this for a second, John. We serve the hospitality industry. When our clients come in and we're working on a luxury resort in Sardinia or something, and we are, that client comes in, what do you think their expectation is for the quality of service that we're going to be providing? They're accustomed to hiring and training people to serve ladies and gentlemen as ladies and gentlemen. And it is an expectation that we, as a hospitality service provider, will emulate that kind of level of care. Okay, so baseline it and say, okay, you have a highly sophisticated consumer of our services. What are their expectations walking in the door when they hire someone like us? Okay. Now, look at the way that we have been serving our clients, and we have over 125 hotels we're working on right now. So, just to understand the scale of our company, we're 75 people based in Chicago. We have a satellite office in Manila in the Philippines, which is a production office for us. But we're working on over 125 hotels right now, John. I mean, that's a lot of hotels. Now,
Oh,
and not every one of them is the resort in Sardinia, okay? But it's a lot of hotels and it's a lot of clients to manage. And what we decided was, wait a second, maybe we should learn from this concierge medicine approach and take our clients, a handful of our clients who are readily engaging with us for multiple projects, and overserve them. And I don't mean overserve them with alcohol. I mean serve them with even more service than we might normally, and kind of treat them like our luxury clients, and maybe treat some of our other clients as really important to us, of course, but offer certain things to those concierge clients that we're not offering to others, and try, if we can, to fill a significant portion of our total available bandwidth with those kinds of clients. And we're doing things for those concierge clients, that we're making services available to them in the early stages of a project at no cost to them, or we're doing some things that make the value equation even better for them. Well, it's a very interesting idea to consider. Should we be treating all of our clients equally? Of course, the baseline should be that they should all be treated well, but we all want to be treated like we're special. We all want to feel like we're being given access to the highest and best of your
right.
capabilities. And so we're trying this new model, and it's working exceedingly well. And it is extending the spirit of hospitality to the service that we're providing directly to our clients. And we're leveraging some of the new tools. You asked the question, like, how do you run these small tests? And the answer is, we're running these small tests that are particularly valuable to a handful of clients that are most valuable to us. Because otherwise, how do you choose who gets access to your new software solution, or your proprietary relationships you have with people like Verve, who's doing a study for us right now for one of our concierge clients, because they're happy to do it and it could be really meaningful and valuable to that client.
And I think that's just so powerful, right? Because you can potentially increase value to the customer you serve, potentially increase your profitability as well, right? By having sort of the special segmentation that you're trying to help this group with.
Well, what I realized, John, was we all, and you know this from your business and the people who you spend time with, but we spend so much energy, effort, even money that we invest in building these relationships with people. We want to retain those relationships and maintain those relationships as best we can. And in an industry where soliciting a proposal for design services or procurement services or branding services is not that difficult, to write an RFP and include us among a list of potential candidates. we could spend a lot of time chasing opportunities and just be one of many when I'd rather be in a position to be a one of one. And if we can just eliminate some of the earn the trust and respect, but then maintain and support that rather than spending so much time and energy trying to form these new relationships.
Yeah, and I think you highlight such an important point, right, for any business. You know, client retention is really, that is what keeps your, you know, fundamental cash flow going. And, customer acquisition, if you don't understand that cost, like you said, it can be very expensive, especially if you don't win, right? Just think about the RFP cycle.
Yeah, we just chased a deal in Hawaii that we didn't get, and I winced when we found out we didn't get the job. Then I got the expense report from the team that had gone and visited the property, and yeah, it's expensive to go chase these opportunities. It really is. So yes, I was inspired by Will Guidara's book called Unreasonable Hospitality. And he tells the story of working for Danny Meyer, the very successful restaurateur, and trying to innovate what service looked like in a fine dining restaurant. And he talks about with all kinds of wonderful stories about the success that they've had and the mistakes they made and how they were able to attract the people to build the culture. And I know you put a high degree of importance on culture in your book. That philosophy plus a little Ted Lasso, by the way, I have to tell you a shout out to Ted Lasso, and I'm going to go down an interesting path for a second here.
Perfect.
For those people who are watching video, you can see that I've got these Ted Lasso stickers all over my water bottle, because the the Ted Lasso is really all about lessons in leadership. And there's some, by the way, I recommend that podcast to those people who love podcasts other than yours, Lasso Lessons, which analyzes the show. But the basic philosophy is how do we serve, whether it's in a fine dining restaurant, as Will Guidara says, or it's your team in a fictional soccer team in England. How do you serve a collective need as a group and build a culture that wants to stick together and support one another? And it doesn't matter what your business is, but if your business serves the hospitality industry, you have some people who are very accustomed to knowing the difference between good service and great service.
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially that culture aspect, because I think that's the glue that holds everything together in the background, right? So if one team member's having a rough day, the others can help shift and help, continue to provide that fantastic service.
Yeah, and I think that in this, you talked about the AI powered world and how AI and technology can supplement the service that is being provided by people. I think the expectations are shifting there that people will be able to provide significantly better service or come better prepared to that meeting or have the background on the competitive set before showing up to the conversation with the prospective client. And all of those expectations are shifting. John, we had a project we're doing right now in Park City, Utah, and the client had come to us and they had used AI to generate the design brief for the project, something that we would normally do in the initial phases of the project. And they said, we've already spent some time on AI organizing our thoughts and we're presenting this to you. And we said, that's fantastic. You've just helped us enormously understand what's most important to you. And then the client said, yeah, and I'm expecting a 10% reduction in fees because I've already done 10% of the work for you. So, and I was listening to another podcast that I love, Lenny's podcast, that is a wonderful interview of tech entrepreneurs, and he was recently interviewing one of the Google tech innovators, and their estimate right now is that we are all 10% more efficient as a result of utilizing AI technology. That's a pretty staggering number.
It really is, and you think of how especially it seems over the last 2 years, right, where it's really some of these common tools, right, that we can utilize, like Chat GPT or Claude or any of the AI engines. It's it really does change, right, and it increases our efficiency. It's amazing to see that kind of shift, like you said, just being able to compile the data quickly.
I have a meeting later this afternoon with a young gentleman who's on his way here from New York. And to prep him for the meeting, I fed a bunch of documents into Claude. I summarized them, exported it, imported it into Notebook LM, and created a podcast, a 20-minute virtual podcast of the subject that he could listen to between the airport and my office so he can be prepared to understand what it is that we're going to be presenting to him later today. And that's the world we're living in. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing.
It really is. And I love that example. I mean, because that is so powerful, right? When you can actually now condense it to something he can listen to and utilize during his downtime that he wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
I taught a course at Cornell University, and I had given a presentation and I had utilized some on-screen things. And afterwards, the professor said, "Can you please send your slide deck to the students?" And I said, "They're never going to look at the slide deck. They're not interested in the slide deck. But I'll tell you what I will do. I'll create an audio file summary of everything that I shared, and I'll send that to you." And of course, that has a much greater likelihood of actually being utilized by, particularly as we look at the generational differences of how people consume information and frankly, what their attention span is. It turned out to be a really effective way to utilize AI.
I think that's such a great example because you can see the generational aspect, right? And to some degree, the younger generations really did expect much more data on demand, right? And when they first
Mhm.
came into the workforce, some of that data wasn't that easily to access, and now it's really up to everybody's game. This data is at our fingertips now that we never had before.
Yes, absolutely, and you're absolutely right about the youngest generation in the workforce right now, who are accustomed to getting the information they need when they need it on a moment's notice, at the detriment of personal interaction, I will say. And my son, who falls into that category, recently was home, ordered a pizza, and the pizza wasn't showing up. And I said, "Joe, we just called a pizza parlor." And he said, "No, no, no, Dad, I can see online that it's in transit." I said, "Yeah, but it's not really telling you what you want. Why don't you, if you called, they'll tell you exactly where the delivery person is. So you'll know, are you the first delivery or the fourth delivery on that person's run?" And he said, "Dad, I just don't feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling somebody." And I thought, maybe I failed as a parent there. But that is, I think, this reliance upon technology that doesn't require human interaction can certainly be detrimental.
I completely agree with you. And I think COVID really highlighted that too, right? Especially when you had that social interaction stripped from some of really the formative years of some of the folks, right, that were working through that. And those social interactions are so important, especially in the workplace, because that's how you work out different ideas, right? And bring in different perspectives. Argue the idea, not the person, right?
Yeah. And in an industry that we serve, which is really designed for people to interact with people, how we go about creating environments that are either kind of an opportunity to recharge or to engage and interact and socialize. But one of the things that happened coming out of COVID for us, John, was having to prove to a traveler that it was worth it to travel, because they can now attend a meeting virtually, or they can send documents easily and share a screen or have a shared workspace. So it became an interesting challenge for the hospitality industry to say, okay, make the offering so good that not only is it, of course, safe to travel there, but that it is enticing and is valuable and is, kind of restorative, if it can be, to people's comfort and peace of mind. And can it be better than staying at home? And so it still is true, by the way. I still
Mhm.
think that we have to kind of give people a reason to travel and be in person. Those of us of a certain age understand the value of FaceTime, and that it face to face time, and that it isn't just the same thing can't be accomplished in a Zoom call, as valuable as that can be. So I think a lot of things have changed actually since COVID, and our industry, the hospitality industry, has changed as a result of it. Financially, let's just get into the financial side of the impact of that of the pandemic on the industry. What happened was that there was a lot of a lot of leniency given to hotel owners during the pandemic and immediately following the pandemic, because the hotel owners, remember, as you know, these are franchises. These are franchisees who are paying fees to the franchisor, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG, et cetera, for the right to have their name on the building. And in exchange for that, they have to comply with the brand standards and expectations. So these parent companies, the franchisors, were expecting the franchisees to pay them their franchise fees. And while there was some leniency there, these hotels that were due for renovations in 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, these hotels were often given an extension for when they needed to renovate, because there wasn't the wear and tear during that period, but also because they knew that it was financial hardship for those people. Now, the same dollars that had been set aside for the renovations that were supposed to happen in 2021, 22, that instead got spent paying down the debt, the mortgage on the building, rather than paying and the franchise fees instead of being put into the renovation, now still need to be spent. And so we have more hotels requiring a renovation than ever before in the history of our industry, which is good for companies like ours, certainly, but very, very difficult as we are hotel owners ourselves, as I talked about. Now the cost of capital is higher than it's ever been, the cost of labor, the cost of material, the cost of shipping. So it's a very interesting and challenging time. The other thing you'll notice is the number of brands out there that are affiliated with Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt has grown significantly. And with that, then there is confusion for the consumer. So if we listed 10 brands for you, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'd ask you then, which parent brand are they affiliated with, and what is the quality level, and what might you expect to pay at that hotel? It's confusing,
Yes.
even for those of us who are in the business. So we have an interesting challenge for the industry overall to be able to be more clear to the consumer about what their value proposition is, and to do that at a time where the reinvestment into the individual assets is more expensive, is more important than ever before. It's a really interesting time in our industry.
It really is fascinating, right? Because it's almost like, you know, a little bit of that slingshot effect, right? Where you kind of had the expansion and then the contraction. And so now, yeah, it's interesting because it has a, you know, kind of trickle effect across the entire supply chain.
Yeah, and it has that effect on you as the consumer too, who may be confused about what the expectation should be for that brand or that hotel. And the rates that you are paying now are significantly higher than they were several years ago. And yet the quality of the stay might not be quite what you would expect as a result of deferred maintenance or renovations or lowered staff levels. And so, one of the things that the hotel industry is measured by is guest satisfaction and intent to recommend. And it matters. What you think of the quality of the hotel really matters to other consumers who are choosing. They're influenced by your review or your star rating. And so there's a lot of power of the intent to buy is in the hands of social media and review sites. And you as a consumer have a lot of power over the influence of who else might choose to make the same decision.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I think that's so true. And especially as a business traveler, right? I mean, sometimes you choose a chain because you're expecting a similar experience, right? From one
Oh
location
yeah.
to the other. And
Yeah.
when you have that expectation broken or something goes wrong and it's not handled appropriately, right? Those are where you get the bad reviews. And yeah, like you said, that data is, you know, more present than it's ever been, which is just incredible.
And now look at the value of these loyalty programs for a second, John, because look, Marriott acquired Starwood for numerous reasons, but one of the most important reasons was because of their Starwood Preferred Guest loyalty program, which Marriott then absorbed, learned all the best aspects of it, and created Marriott Bonvoy, which is a very powerful loyalty program. And yet, that same young traveling consumer that we were talking about earlier cares less about brand loyalty and loyalty programs than the previous generation did. So yes, they have more data, they're able to be more effective in their marketing and their messaging. And the question is, how effective is it really going to be, and how valuable will it be in that emerging kind of consumer demand area? Again, back to how good is your crystal ball, John? Because it's very difficult to predict an ever-changing industry like hospitality.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's one of the most exciting things that I think folks can learn, especially from the work that you're doing, right? Is you get to see some of these generational differences really up front, right? Much more probably sooner than some of the other industries would experience it. And part of it's just because of that need to understand, right? What is their buying pattern influence?
And they stay, right? This isn't just a transaction or an online transaction.
Right.
This is a full experience. People are staying for one night or 30 nights in a hotel. They will tell you what they think. You can look at the data of what did they choose to take advantage of? Did they eat in the restaurant? Did they utilize the spa? There's a lot more data available. So if we can harvest that data and utilize it through AI, which is such a great consolidator, we can reshape our offering on a more regular basis to suit the ever-changing needs of that consumer. So it is a fascinating time. It's a great time to be a creative, by the way. I think that while AI is a wonderful manifestation of a lot of design iteration, and I just said a lot there, but that's a way of saying creativity is design iteration, but it's fueled by a lot of different inputs, including emotion. And that's what AI misses. AI is emotionless unless it keeps telling you how smart you are and what a great suggestion that is. I set mine to be as flattering as possible, by the way, Jeff. Um, but it is a great time to be creative because I think that we are in a creative industry, but we all have to be more and more creative about how we are choosing to navigate the world or our businesses. Creativity is really valuable right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's that creativity, that ability to rapidly learn. I think that is so critical in today's world. And, one of the things I really do like, especially the examples you shared with the AI here, is, you see it as a force multiplier, right, in the industry, but it's not replacing the creativity. That still has to come really from the human and that emotional experience.
It absolutely does. And I think that there's been quite a bit of talk about a fear of AI. And what I've been advocating to my team here, but also to my students who I was just in Europe. I teach a course in Lyon, France, and these are grad students who are developing restaurant concepts for us. And what I teach them is how to use AI effectively and where the human should supplement the capabilities of AI, not the other way around, not where AI should supplement the abilities. Because there is such an important role for technology to play, and it is a superpower kind of enhancer of all of our capabilities. But the values of personal relationships, the values of, as we've talked about, whether it's this concierge client relationship or the expectation that service and hospitality, unreasonable hospitality, can still be a source of differentiation between no matter what your business is. If you can serve your clients better than your competitor, you have a distinct advantage. And it does, and I'm not even comparing the quality of your output. I'm just talking about the quality of your service. So start there. I mean, this is the advice that I'm giving to my students, and I'm asking them to engage with me. I'm asking them to work on some of the things that, my son, if he listens to this, is going to love that I'm discrediting him. But that's the thing that is getting lost, is that the focusing on the areas that truly still will have lasting value in utilizing your own skills as a human to interact with other humans and serve them well. So I do think we're at a particularly intriguing time, and we're very excited about technology. We're using AI to write our own software here. We've just replaced our entire procurement platform with software that we've written ourselves. We're writing software for ourselves. We're writing software for others. And it is a fascinating time to see what's possible.
It really is. And I was thinking as you've shared so much of your experience today, I'm a big proponent of job theory. And I think what you have shared today is a masterclass right in that job theory because it's about serving the customers, it's about serving your employees, your associates. It's so important, right? And I really appreciate you sharing that perspective.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thanks for the opportunity. I do think that that's something. I'm going to go back to my son as long as I'm staying on that theme for 1 second. He asked me for some advice, and I had said to him, I said, Joey, look, you may not be the best athlete, you may not be the tallest kid, but you can easily be the nicest kid.
Yeah.
And that idea of anyone looking for a job or looking for their next career or looking for ways to enhance their capabilities within their own companies, if they embrace the spirit of hospitality, if they use tools to be more creative and more personal and provide an even greater level of care, they will stand out as individuals. And those people can be a contributor to a group who can provide a greater level of care and service and part of a company that can be known for the quality of care and service. I like to talk about it as kind of the Disney castle, John. We were working with a client we were consulting with, and I had used that term, and they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, everyone associates the Disney castle with Disney. And yes, it represents magic, but it also represents, for those of us who've experienced Disney service, a quality of care, a quality of service, a quality of design delivery that is extraordinary. It's a very, very high level. And I try to get the team here to be influenced by the best in class examples of service and design. And I'm sounding like a Disney commercial, but I'm strongly advocating experiencing it for yourself if you haven't already.
It's funny you say that because I remember taking my girls when they were little to Disney World, and it's like like you said, they have the great service model. And so you have a week full of being treated like royalty, right? And then I go back to the airport. We're getting ready to fly home. And, I've preferred, at the time it was US Air, but I had preferred status. And it was like, bam, welcome back to the real world, And it was almost like a slap in the face.
Yeah, doesn't that say a lot about the quality of service that we're most regularly accustomed to and the opportunity to really differentiate one offering from another through training and through hiring and looking again placing culture as one of the most critical elements to your own success and I mean that both as a personal culture, how do you reflect that as a human being? And if you can get your company, I'm very fortunate now to be the CEO of this company. I've been with the company for 38 and a half years at this point. I was just the intern they hired in 1988. But now I have even more influence over the culture of the entire company. And what an incredible opportunity to kind of, try my best to lift the culture to be more representative of best in class kind of quality of care.
Now, I love your vision and the way that you're executing on it too. It comes across loud and clear, which to me, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing and how you're also trying to help others. So that's fantastic.
Well, thanks, John. I think the world will be a better place if we all are trying to make it that way. So I'm just trying to do my part, just like you're doing yours.
Well, thank you so much. I think on that note, I really appreciate your time today. It's been a wonderful discussion. And quite frankly, I would love to continue the dialogue on a future episode where we could actually, dig deeper into some of the cultural elements and leadership side as well. You were
I'd
just
be
so
happy to.
awesome.
I would be happy to and appreciate you and appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts on your excellent podcast. And I know you have a lot of people who value your thoughts and the thoughts of your guests. So thanks for including me among those.
Thank you so much, Ron. And I'll look forward to talking to you soon. I think
Sounds
that's
great.
it for today.
Thanks, John. Be
Thanks.
well. Bye bye.